Alright, there we go. I think I'm all set. I think. Yeah, I think I'm all set. There we go. Oh, howdy, Xavier. Glad I got you for this midday stream. Listen. My sleep schedule has been all out of whack yesterday. I'll have you know, I slept for a solid... I slept for a solid, like, 9 hours yesterday. From, like, 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. Actually, it was closer to 9, so it was probably more like 8 hours, but still. I slept, like, that entire thing and woke up at 5 on the dot. Like, I had been up that entire night before, and then I was up of pretty much the entire night today. But I actually went to bed and got up at midday. So, I'm getting myself back on a normal schedule. And then I'll be awake enough to actually do midday streams. Also, I love how I'm still hearing the flail sound. I don't know if that's because, like, if that's just how the game is set up, or if I just I screwed up the, if I screwed up things that bad, you know? Uh-huh, I'm serious. I'm super serial. Alright, whatever you do, don't interact with the crazy crow man. No, it looks awful anyway. Hey, Mercy. Oh, Loki, you sweet ducker. JK, what we doing today? We're looking at Ariandel again. I never noticed these columns were broken here, right over the, well, obviously them being broken is in itself not that weird, but I've never noticed that they're broken right on top of... Yeah, they're broken right on top of those walls, which is very telling. There we go. Let's see. The devs could bother removing all the pillars when they changed the arena in development. I assume you mean couldn't bother. And I would agree with you, but I think it's still very telling about the history of the place. Because the thing is, these walls are very obviously, they're, let's say, call them renovations. That they are very clearly here. Also, I can't tell. I thought it was like a fresco or something, but am I crazy, or is this not loading properly, or like something going wrong here? I want to go back up and then back in. I was kind of half joking. Oh, that's why it's still. Oh. Yeah, that explains a lot. That explains a lot. I was like, I could have swore this would be more recognizable, you know? I don't have a torch with me either. This is the problem with unlocking all the bonfires with cheat engine. Oh, right. Right. Yeah, there we go. Let's go to the shrine. Let's just go to the shrine. Anyway, let us see. Yeah, there's really no option for me to get in here unless I get rid of Frida's thing and whatever, but I think I'm in a good spot where I can just kind of warp in and out. I'm just hoping it's not ruining the textures for the wall frescoes. Yeah, I guess we'll just live with this. Yeah, so it is, because I screwed things up that we're still hearing that flail thing go. Right, because I want to work on, what's it called? I want to work on Ariandel next as a, as my Dark Souls 3 thesis. Because, you know, I've had it half done for so long. But then there's also Londor, and I know that one's the more popular, so it's like, okay, maybe I should prioritize that. So I'm going over to see, like, how easy it would be for me to accomplish this. And one of the things I have to work out is some of this timeline stuff with Frida and Ariandel and Priscilla and things, and really kind of nail down exactly where that stuff is going to be. It is worth noting how commonly we're seeing the how commonly we see these paintings removing the face. Like, that looks very deliberate. Yeah, it's not just, oh, they just have a texture. It's like, no, like that's totally intentional. You're stuck with him and on fire. I don't know about being on fire, but do I have a torch or something I can work with? Oh, you know what? I forget. I have cast light. Like, why am I looking for a torch? Pretty sure this doesn't work though if I do this, right? Yeah. No, but yeah. You can very clearly see that some of the portraits have had the face specifically tarnished. Oh, whoopsie. Oh, the paintings have fire in them. That's what I meant. Do they? Oh! I want to look at the... I can kind of see it, yeah. Is that intentional, or is that just damage to the painting? Well, Xavier, now I want to look... I'm going to have to ask Nobre if he can take out the textures for these things. Or maybe I have to look for them in the art book for DS3. No, yeah, that's definitely fire right there. Yeah, okay. I've never accounted for that before. She's in a burning room such on fire from what I see. Yeah, I can see it too. See, I was willing to just kind of take that as like just generic, you know, like a reddish background and stuff, like it was not that clear. But yeah, now that you say it's fire, I can see it. Yeah, like look at that. It looks like her chair there is on fire, right? Like it's the dark black, and then you got like the red and orange on the outline. That one you can quite clear. It's easier to see, I think, on some of these edges at the bottoms, right? Like that one there, you can very see it next to where the cast light is. You can see that like little licks of flame there. There in that corner, right next to where she's sitting at her feet. Who is this anyway? Probably Frida. That's another reason why I'm highlighting how the face is destroyed. Because if you look at Frida, you know that her face isn't as beautiful as it's shown in these pictures. It's scarred underneath there. You can actually see the scar more easily. It's a lot more easy to see, you know, with like Zuli or someone taking a camera or something. But yeah, you can see it a little bit of a scar mark. See if I can get the angle just right. Yeah, oh. Yeah, you can see a little bit of that scarring. See? Right there. Call my queen confirmation. So, Frida just suddenly has her eye glow purple where the scar is. And yeah, it has. I think. Do we have any more examples that's more clear with the portrait of her with the candle? Because I'm wondering if the candle has any additional flames, or if that's the implication supposed to be that the candle is the source. Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask Nobre if I can get the raw textures of this, see if it's any clearer. Oh, it's dope. Okay. Because theoretically, yeah, okay, because theoretically, you can come up through here and have never opened the doors here. So to open them, they're giving you the option. Okay, okay. I was about to be like, what? Say, what? Purple eyes and black flame, it's undeniable. Yeah, but this is why I like revisiting areas that I've been to and have documented, because there's always new little details that I might have missed or something, especially when I stream with you guys, since you guys, you know, you're extra pairs of eyes, right? And when so many people are being my eyes, it makes it harder for me to miss something. Like, yeah, look there. There, it looks so obvious now that that's flame. But then the face has obviously been removed here on this, which isn't true for all the paintings, right? But it's true for a good number of them, where sometimes you'll see some of the same images we see elsewhere, but the face is very obviously damaged. It's been tinkered with. So the idea seems to be that the painter, with the arrival of Frida, was doing a lot of practicing painting with her, and the fire motif is supposed to highlight how, you know, it's very important that she show the painter flame, because, you know, the idea is, like, you know, when the ashes are too, the flames will essentially, you know, the flame will appear, will alight, right? That's supposed to be the prophecy. Hey, Nobre, you know, perfect timing. I was just talking about you. I want to look at the actual textures in the files for these paintings, because Xavier pointed out it looks like a lot of them have flames and stuff in the corner, and so I've noticed how some of them seem to have like damaged faces. So I'm actually curious how that's handled by the game. Like, does it have one raw texture and then it's applying them to these different portraits, and some portraits have like face damage, or are they different textures where they you know, bake in the damage to the face and stuff? I'm curious. Hey, I'm gonna lurk and go to sleep if that's alright. No problem, Tyrone. You guys are all free to lurk if you want. Yeah, I can see them later today. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so it looks like the idea is you have her holding up the, ironically, she's holding up a candle to look at the painting. This is her sitting in her chair, like so. Actually, she's sitting on a stool, isn't she? Yeah, she's sitting on a stool. So she's got that chair, and it looks like she's... I can't tell if she has something in her hand. It might just be the texture, but... She definitely has a hand on a table or a nightstand or something. I'm saying your voice is just that beautiful, it puts me to sleep. Oh, thanks, Tyrone. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Alright, so... And there's also this picture that... I think it's a picture, or is it a tablet? Or is it a... Actually, it kind of looks like a gravestone now that I think about it. Yeah, it almost looks like a gravestone. Go up here. Looks like it has art on it. It looked like it might have been writing. I couldn't tell. But it could be art. That's what I'm saying. It could be a painting, but it could also be a gravestone, especially with the way it's shaped. It's a bit weird that you have a curved top on a painting like this, especially when the emphasis is put so hard on, you know, square frames. Or rectangular frames, I should say. Yeah, it's really hard to see. Also, Loki, got a question from the Haida thesis. Would the sea's water have come from the sky, like Noah-style type flood? That's the only source for such a huge amount of water I could think of. Possibly. It could be like a Noah's Ark type of situation. I have not put too much thought into that, because I think, just by the nature of the event, it's impossible to really say. Could it have come rolling in from elsewhere? Maybe. Could it have been just rained really heavily, and the rain just caused a flood that eventually caused things to collapse and sink into it? Maybe. The problem is we know it has to be something very dramatic, because it ends up, you know, crashing down and causing, like, tons of waves and things like that. It's always hard to tell with that type of stuff if that's reflected in the architecture, because obviously, most of Haida seems like it's got, their roofs are not, like, you know, they're not collapsed in on themselves. I'm gonna wait till this goes away. No, I can see it going either way, Nobre. It would make sense for it to come from the sky, right? Because that's where you'd assume all the water would be from, right? But it could also be that the water, if it did rain down, it rained down elsewhere, and then that brought crashing waves that came in from, you know, the side / below or whatever, right? So I'm not too dogmatic on where it came from. Let's see. Could go a little bit more this way. There we go. There we are. There we are. Oh boy. Perfect. You know. Just in case. As perfect as possible, always as perfect as possible. I also interpret the phrases as if Frida torn them apart or did something with the paintings. Oh, I agree with you. It's very obvious that Frida must have done it, because she obviously has... it's like with Mytha tearing the faces off her marionettes, right? The idea being is that, looking at this artist's rendition of the face that hides her scar just ends up inadvertently reminding her of the scar itself, and that causes her to have a fit of anger where she destroys it occasionally, right? She doesn't do it all the time, clearly, right? She's not like Mytho, where she literally rips off the faces of all of her puppets. But it's clear that it's happened enough times where, like, she looks at it, you know... It's one of those things where, like, they're all around. For some reason, she hasn't gotten rid of them. Obviously, for storytelling reasons. Frida knows she's in a video game and we need an environment to tell her story. But the point is that, you know, every now and then, you know, sometimes she's just like, you know, I'm just gonna throw some acid at that painting. I'm gonna go and be an environmental activist. But you think that maybe she wanted to be depicted as perfectly as possible? I don't know about that. Because it looks like how perfect are you gonna make her look more than just the fact you don't have her showing the scar, period. Right? I think the fact that they even portray her in white and stuff, right? You know, getting those Priscilla colors, you know, purity, you know, very clean and all that. I think the fact you even go with that one, obviously that's not her she has a big ego. I do think ego does play a role, but I think what you see here is that, I think it's meant to showcase for you how Frida is very much plagued by her past, specifically her failure to presumably assist with Londor's plan, because the only reason for her to be a Ash, and for her to have that scar, is that she was an ordinary individual who threw herself into the first flame, or fire in general, and then ended up becoming, ended up dying, right? Turned to ashes afterwards, and then she came back, but because of the manner of which, you know, she was scarred, right? Beforehand, that was left behind on her. It's somewhat unusual, but it is believable if we take it with the idea that she didn't just instantly, you know, incinerate. She was, like, burned on the face or whatever initially, and then only, you know, a significant, however you define that, time afterward, she was killed. Since From Software is very vague on what gets healed by someone who will suffer the undead curse and what doesn't. We know in the cases of stuff like, say, Vengarl, that if you lose a limb, and the limb and you are, at the very least, significantly separated, both of you may suffer the curse, but you're not going to just magically come back together, right? Your ashes will. So, clearly, ashes and stuff might do that. Now, granted, that doesn't go into the scenario of what happens if you take the ashes and scatter them to the wind, or something like that, right? But it's very obvious that, it can reconstitute your form, only to a certain extent when, at the moment of death. Otherwise, you will remain exactly as you are, right? You're not going to suddenly reverse aging. You're going to be, you know, you're not going to be Big Hat Logan, and you're going to be 50 years younger, right? Looks like a maiden set, actually, to me. It's a little different from the maiden set. The hood doesn't look quite like that. It looks more like a typical nun. I get what you're saying, because the maiden set's also for quote-unquote nuns, right? And she's a sister. But it's a different... I don't think I have it on me, unfortunately. But it's a different design. It's not the exact same. I get what you saying, though. Alright, so... back to what I was saying. So it looks like this church was built and was probably around since when Priscilla was alive.
I see flame. Flame fluttering once again.
Or at the very least, it was a church that was established perhaps for her burial. No, actually, I think this was actually where she originally lived. I think this was an area where she lived and worked. I think that was the idea with this chapel. I think it was originally had the living Priscilla, and then obviously when she died, Yorshka takes the body and leaves, and they establish this monument, you know, for the dead Priscilla. I think these pillars were probably removed at this point, so they could add these walls, because Mommy Velka... Alright, let's see if it's actually the texture, if it's just because of the darkness. Yeah, it's not showing the textures here. So yeah, I think I need to, I think I would need to open up the area properly. What a weird detail. But anyway, they created these walls and stuff, because there's statues of Velka back here. There's obviously more of these tables with books and stuff, like books on the altars and things, right? So it's very obvious that Velka was being properly worshipped here. I would say Priscilla was most likely was also there, because she was probably kind of like a historian slash, like, you know, elder mother figure, if I had to guess. And then she died, and that's the suspicious thing. Is who or why did she die? What happened to the father of her children? So these chairs, I presume, would be where people worked? Yes. They have the same fancy chairs we see in Lothric, especially for, high priestesses and stuff. So it makes sense that these are, or the Grand Archives, I think they have the same model of chair. So it's clearly something that's designed for, like, this is a very fancy church, this is for, you know, it's a place of high status, right? It's located, obviously, on top of a hill, overlooking the village and things like that. It has the setup for when you visit Priscilla with the Velka statue and stuff, right? So you turn the crank below, it turns the statue to face Priscilla, the passageway opens up to Priscilla, you go down the long corridor, right? And you have Priscilla right here at the back. Now, obviously, now it's her corpse, but I wouldn't be surprised if the living Priscilla was here at some point. Like, there would, you know, you'd have, like, a whole setup, right? Now, again, it could be this entire church was built just for this, but I don't think so. Because then it seems weird that you get this prophecy, and then they're essentially removing these pillars here and having to erect a wall to help block and hide Velka and stuff. And the thing is, it's not that the blocking of Velka thing is important in and of itself, but it's clearly the idea is to put the focus on Priscilla and her being dead. And then the depictions on these graphics show the stabber and the crusher, right? Each of them either stabbing or crushing a white snake, right? Now it's two white snakes. Obviously, white scales is associated with Priscilla. Also, we could say by extension, both of her daughters, the painter and Yorshka. So, in theory, a depiction of two figures who are killing the snakes would be trying to kill Priscilla's daughters. Which, again, considering we're in a room that is memorializing Priscilla, is very notable. Another thing we notice is that it has a bunch of people down at the bottom, right? And they're like, it almost looks like they're supposed to be like praise, like, oh my god, like, you know, but it looks like a hellscape because there's fire, but it's like burning them. It almost looks like, you know, classical medieval depictions of like hell and stuff you'll see in like mosaics and frescoes like these. It's just actually it's just a doll with presumably part of her dead. Yeah, it's not like her actual body. Yorshka came with the body and it was buried in Irithyll, where the Church of Yorshka is, the graveyard there, right? But we have her tail skin. And the tail skin with the wooden model, right? But, like, you know, essentially it's her quote-unquote body, right? It's her memorial. It actually, it very much resembles, it reminds me a lot of those mummified Buddhist monks and stuff, the way it's buried here. Father killed Priscilla and father committed self-death. I saw that in my dreams. It's possible. It's that, or it's possible that the villagers killed him. The question then would become, why would he do it? Hey Sub-Zero. Hey Loki, I'm new here. What's the difference between undead and unkindled? Are they undead that fail to become Lords of Cinder? Sort of. In theory, an unkindled isn't limited to this. You know, in theory, an unkindled sort of functions. It builds off the principle that we see in Dark Souls 1 with the Black Knights, right? So So going back to Dark Souls 1, there's always this question of, outside of just Nito, because Nito likes collecting the dead, but Nito's currently estranged from the Anor Londo religion, so that really shouldn't have an effect on this. Why does everyone just bury their dead like normal? Why don't they have, like, say, cremation being the norm? Because wouldn't that be a more effective way of dealing with the undead curse than just having a bunch of dead people buried who you never know whether or not they're actually going to come back to life and dig themselves out of their graves and then, you know, causing, you know, havoc and stuff for people, right? Why is ground burial still the norm? Now, you can already kind of pick up the implications for this, but Dark Souls 3 really sort of decides it's gonna, you know, specifically look at that, and the answer is, because if you cremate them, they might not, you know, they might still come back, right? Now, as Dark Souls 3 elaborates, they don't come back exactly the same way. They come back as the unkindled, fireless ash. So, imagine you are a regular person, or even an undead, you get killed by the Lord of Cinder, and the Lord of Cinder, or I should say the Soul of Cinder in the context of DS3, completely incinerates your body. You have been reduced to a pile of ashes, right? Kind of like the ashes we pick up, where maybe there's some body parts there, you know, something that's not like completely charred, but you know, you're mostly just ash. Well, your undead curse, strangely enough, the dark sign and all that, is still, in many cases, going to be able to let you survive. So just like when you get stabbed or killed, or, you know, a limb gets cut off and you bleed out or whatever, right? You are going to have all of your damage reversed and your body reconstituted, right? But it does not fully reconstitute, because it's already been turned into ash. It has been the rock, which has been imbued with disparity, making it the various parts of your living matter, your flesh, your blood, your organs, all that stuff, right? You know, your brain matter, all that. All that stuff has already been permanently transformed by the power of flame. The power of flame and disparity has completely converted that rock into a new form, which is ash, right? It's still gray, you know, because, again, because the Japanese for the color gray is actually just, you know, the color of ash, right? So there's always a wordplay, right? So at the beginning of the universe, it was, you know, the gray, it was a world of gray with the crags, the dragons, the trees, and all that, right? Like, everything was rock. And then at the end of the world, because Gwyn refuses to let the flame die following its natural course, everything is gonna be ash again, but literal ash, right? Like, that's the idea. You know, it's sort of bookending just like the beginning, so it shall be at the end. But in the case of the undead, it's like, okay, you have now had your body has now had its physical constitution permanently altered, where now it is back together as if it was normal, but something on the fundamental level has been transubstantiated into actual ash. And as a result of that, you have a smell that is makes you distinct from normal undead. You have a certain coldness to you. You're uniquely cold, which is why ash have this instinctual desire to pursue and seek flame, which is why they're sort of set up as to be these lords of cinder seekers, to seek the fire that remains, right? Because you know, ashes seek embers meaning remaining fire. So you have this idea where because you have this lack of heat, because, you know, the fire burned through you and all that's left behind is this cold byproduct, with all the heat taken away, you are now instinctively desiring and seeking heat, which is why in the context of Ariandel and in the context of the First Flame, Ashen ones are so uniquely useful. But outside of that, you're basically an ordinary undead. Now, you can say there's a question on how hollowing could theoretically work, since we at least don't have the same hollowing mechanic, but you could argue that's just because, you know, they want to highlight the gameplay mechanics of you hollowing from your drawing out your souls and stuff, and not have a, you know, reverse humanity mechanic. You know, you could argue that's just the nature of the way Dark Souls 3 was set up. They wanted to handle it differently. Ashes can never hollow like undead. That's pretty OP. I wouldn't say that. I just want to highlight that that's something you would have to keep in mind, is that mechanically mechanically, obviously, the game doesn't let you experience hollowing like we would in the past games. I'm not saying that's not necessarily means that it doesn't happen. And you know, it's kind of like how, you know, you don't get permanent curse status when you get hit by a basilisk, right? The game just pretends it didn't happen, right? Kind of like, it's sort of one of those things where, like, you know, the mechanics between the games differ, and they're not always lore friendly, right? Like, they might capture an aspect of the lore, but they don't, not in its totality, or how they interact with each other fully makes sense. I've gone over this before in my book. Anyway, I hope that lengthy explanation helps with you. Again, I recommend you can find the link to my website in the description. I would recommend maybe checking out my, under the Dark Souls 3 section of the guide page, Third Beginning, because that does go over some of the stuff some of this stuff with, you know, Ashen Ones and all that stuff, and that might help you, along with understanding the premise for 3. No problem. There's an interview where Miyazaki stated that they noticed players felt underwhelmed with their characters looking ugly most of the time, so they changed that for DS3. See, yeah, that makes sense to me, right? Like, they where the idea, like, again, it's not really a lore explanation, it's more so, let's do it for the sake of the players, because let's be honest, most of the time, yeah, you were playing at, you go through all this trouble with character creator, and yet you spend most of the game looking like a, you know, an unripe grape. Well, overripe grape, I should say. Dried, desiccated grape. If the father killed Priscilla, only thing I can imagine would be her being half dragon. She's called undesirable. Father felt disgust, killed her, felt regret, then killed herself. That's weird then, because he fathered 2 of her children. Like, it's not like you can hide. It's not like she can hide that she's a half dragon. She's living in the painting world. If any situation where you have that type of relationship, you think that happened. If I had to posit a hypothesis, I would say it would have to be over the flame thing. Here's what we know about Priscilla. She lived long enough to sire 2 children with someone. The youngest of those children was old enough to be able to hear her mother explain, with the understanding that she would in the future paint the next world for it. Now, we don't know why it has to be the painter, right? Why her? Why? Well, maybe the idea was that she just had the artistic talent, and they're like, oh, this is a once-in-a-generation trait. Because Ariandel just had to restore the painting, and he used his own blood. So it wasn't like he had to be this master artist stuff, but to actually, like, perform the magic to create a new world through painting, I can imagine maybe they need someone who's actually a talented painter. Maybe Priscilla's daughter showed that aptitude, and then Priscilla was basically, you know, I don't mean this in the pejorative sense, but grooming her to take on that role. Raisins / jerky. Either of those would be good too. But so I would think that maybe what the idea would be then is that, okay, so she lives long enough to be told, hey, those who know not fire cannot paint the world. Those who are captivated by fire must not paint the world, right? So the idea that Priscilla was trying to tell her was that, hey, the gods, the medials, you know, the lords, they were, they knew what fire was, and that allowed them to paint the world, in their colors, right? The entire world became, to Gwyn's liking, to simplify things, right? Let's just, like, distill it down to Gwyn, right? But the problem was that Gwyn and the lords were captivated by fire, and this is so sad. This makes me extra sad that Dark Souls 1 didn't localize this properly, because it's such an important detail. This idea that they were attracted to, it drew them, it caught their eye, and they couldn't look away. It brought, you know, it just unconsciously made them, you know, enthralled with it. They couldn't stop looking at it, right? And the problem was that fire became this thing that they could not be distracted from, and became their single-minded obsession. They could not look to anything else. And the point that Priscilla's trying to make is, you have to know fire, but don't become so enthralled with fire that you don't realize that you can't realize that it's ultimately not necessary, which is ultimately essentially Priscilla poetically trying to tell her, do not create a world that's based on fire like this one was by Ariamis with the power of, you know, the holy magic, the light, the flame, right? Base this instead on something else, and as we see, it ends up being based on the Dark Soul. So the important thing there then is, if the painter was old enough to be able to understand and internalize that, she couldn't be any more than a small child. And she still looks like a small child, but let's be fair, we don't know what the, you know, it's kind of like this question with the giant and the giant blacksmith and stuff, and him apparently being like him supposedly being very young and stuff when he started doing his blacksmithing and things like that. Like he was apparently baby. But we don't know what the life cycle is for like a half dragon person, so who knows how long the painter has been quote unquote a child, right? We don't know how prolonged her adolescence is with when she's like, you know, an immortal dragon. But all of that together tells me that at the very least that she was old enough to be able to comprehend, understand, and show her artistic skills. Which tells me that at the very least the idea that, hey guys, we should maybe think of abandoning this painting for something better had, or for a new world in the future, had in fact come up, and maybe that could be the reason why Priscilla's father, and then like you said, maybe he self-deleted, maybe he was caught by the villagers and executed for his crimes, who knows? But I think the idea would be that at the very least there would be some in the painted world who would disapprove of what was happening, and that's another possibility. What if there was a mob who tried killing, and then the father and Priscilla both got killed in the process? But the village obviously doesn't care about whoever the hell screwed her. They cared about, you know, Priscilla, right? You know, good old mommy Priscilla. She's totally, I don't know about that. Anyway, the idea then would have to be something like, okay, so, you know, father potentially is either kills Priscilla or is killed along with Priscilla. Those are the only two scenarios I can really see. Because otherwise, it's just a character who's completely missing, doesn't really have anything important to him, nothing really notable about it. So it's either A, he's this character who's sort of like implicitly important because he's sort of responsible for kickstarting all this stuff in motion, or he is, or he's a total non-entity. It doesn't really matter. He was probably killed with her, and we can kind of like disregard him either way. Oh, I remembered something. Doesn't the Corvian Bros say the villagers agreed to go on and make a new world? It implies they disapproved of that. No. The context is that the Corvian Bro is talking in terms of they all came together and resolved to they all came together and resolved in the course of Ariandel and Frida being around to let things burn down and you know move on to the next world, which indirectly implies that, oh wow, somebody didn't place that properly, huh? Anyway, which indirectly does imply that yes, they were not exactly on that page before then, which is getting to my point. I think when we see the Crusher and Stabber with this portrayal of fire burning them like hell, while you have these dark cloaked figures stabbing and crushing representations of Priscilla's daughters in Priscilla's, you know, grave, quote unquote, here, you know, her little mausoleum in this spot. And the fact that they're hiding the statues of Velka behind these depictions, right? Like, it's one of these things where, okay, presumably maybe there was supposed to, maybe I don't know how these things work in actual churches, but maybe there's a way you can like open them or move them so you can go in between and go do your normal priestly stuff. Maybe that was still happening, but it's very obvious that they're trying to push Velka aside, almost like, you know, kind of like, you know, put her in the background, sideline her, as it were. Similar to how Sullivan seems to sideline Gwyn and anything that doesn't have to do with Gwendolyn, because obviously for Sullivan, it's not that Gwyn isn't important or crucial, but that he doesn't want people thinking about Gwyn before Gwendolyn, right? Because obviously that could jeopardize their base, because, oh my god, you might think there's a higher purpose beyond just listening to what I, the representative of God, Gwendolyn, says. You might be thinking that there's a higher god, Gwyn, who, you know, might lead you to question my actions or Gwendolyn's actions or motives, and therefore act outside of my interests as Gwendolyn's representative, right? You know, all that political, you know, finagling. So then in this context, it would be, okay, I presume that Velka's the one who comes in and makes the prophecy. Because this is the only case where I cannot say that there's a naturalistic explanation for such a specific prophecy. Like, it's so specific that the idea is that, oh yeah, when ashes are 2, a fire's gonna light up. Which is clearly intended to be, at the very least, it was understood by those who received the prophecy, that that was referring to the idea of the fire that would burn down this world and bring about the next. Which would, and obviously the idea of the ashes, as we can see in these depictions, as like these dark shadowy figures, are supposed to be actually people. So it has to be actual Ashen One undead. Ooh. I have a public safety message on my phone. Okay. Claw Mike Queen. Yeah, the Claw Mike Queen. I find it interesting that the flames are black flames too. I have to think more about that in context of Frida, like why she has the black flames and stuff, because her soul is very unique looking and stuff. And again, that makes me wonder, does that have to do with her history in Londor? Is it something else? Like, I got questions. Oh, look, I just found a harvestable golden bone shards in the hinterlands. Ooh. Ooh. That's all over Sadu Altus too, right? No, I mean, like, on the Stabber and Crusher paintings. Oh, are they black flames? I thought they were normal flames. I remember it being, orange or red. Maybe they are black, though. I remember the figures being black. Let me see, let me bring it up. Let's see if I have it. I think I do. I should. Oh no, maybe it might be under textures and stuff. 1 second. Oh, no, I do not have the texture for that. No, Bray, and when I ask you to do that for the chapel, also get that for me. I could have swore I had it. It might be. Wait, maybe it's just in the folder and I never put in textures? Maybe because it wasn't technically a texture? I'm sure I have the records in Ariandel. I just want to see if I have the raw texture file, though. Yeah, I don't see it. Let's check under my edits, then. Dark Souls 3. Oh, I don't have under Stabber or Crusher. Oh, God. I have so much. I have so much here. If I don't have it named, it could be, like, literally anywhere, because it could be under, like, you know, 5287A006, you know, some random-ass code. I'm not seeing it on a quick perusal. Ariandel. No. Damn. Alright, so we're gonna look. Let me look through my my in-game shots. Ariandel. Oh, sorry. End up minimizing that. As always, this thing opens up way too big for my tastes. There you go, you guys can see it now. I think I even dropped it in Discord a long time ago. Look, I wouldn't be surprised if you did. Those bush bone shards are found right next to the base in the shadow. Oh, you know what? I remember that now. Yeah, yeah. The harvestable ones are found around minor Erd trees, Church of the Crusade, and Big Chalice. Cool, cool. But one in the hinterlands, huh? It's on a small little hill overlooking the shaman village by its entrance. Ooh. Gonna have to keep that in mind. Yeah, so we got these statues here on the side, right? We got these little things, which are obviously Velka statues, which have since been removed. Again, if these statues have been defaced, it's not a shocker that the others are removed like we see at the village, right? So again, there's very much this idea that, oh, don't listen to Velka, right? There's very much the idea that Velka would be in support of the prophecy, which is another reason why, and with this combined with how much they're trying to discredit her and put her in the background and stuff, and even like Gale's like, oh, merciful goddess to the Kaitha statue, it seems very obvious that Velka is basically, is probably the one who handed it out. Let's see if I can find. Oh my god. Feet. Yep, feet. Ah, here it is. Yeah, it does kind of look black. But, you know, that could just be the texture and lighting here. Yeah, I think I like this one generally, but I think if I want to do a zoom in and like compare it to the Ariam, because I think that what this reminds me of when I look at this shape, it reminds me of the original Ariamis painting because it had a similar verticality to it. So I'm wondering if that's the idea with having like the red on the side here. You could search up for its concept art. Look, I could, but I don't want to go to the trouble. Let's see. God, it really is amazing how dark stuff is when it's not edited. Oh, I loved it having, yeah, you have the snakes here and stuff too. Yeah, you know what? There's the snakes on the entrance and the snakes overhang here, you're right? Yeah, I think Priscilla did live here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was probably where she lived. I don't think it's just her grave area. It's called Dark Souls for sure. Yeah, look here, just like you got the little stand here at the church for the village, the Crovian village. Okay, yeah. God, I love these. Anyway. So you have your Stabber and Crusher, which are representative of the ash. You have these dead trees, which obviously dead trees doesn't look very cheery. You got the dead bodies here that they're stabbing and crushing. You got I think it's like 4 or 5 of these guys here, and they almost look hollow or whatever, but right? But it's clear this idea of like, oh, the damned, right? With the flame. So I think I think the idea here is that Velka probably came in and presented a prophecy. And while Velka was, obviously Velka is their goddess. She's being worshipped and put here. I don't think the Ariandel people were totally on board with the whole moving on to the next world or anything like this. I think Ariandel especially did not want this. Maybe he's another person we would have to question if he's implicated in Priscilla's death. I think though, because of his, because he's only a pastor, he's more or less goes along with it, but I think he does depictions like this in order to sort of subtly nudge people that it isn't for the best. So while everyone's like, oh, the good father, he was tricked by that woman, I think it was more so along the lines of Ariandel was always a skeptic about moving on from the world. Frida agreed with him, and so they both agreed to cooperate. I think that's the idea. Flames are black with some hint of gray. Okay, good to know. So very much trying to portray everything as like this dark and gloomy and delirious. That might also play into why Frida was so big on hiding her black flames and stuff like that. She was using the scythe and stuff, but we don't see her ever cast the black flame and things like that. It's only, but then again, I guess you could argue, when did she have those black flames always with her, or did they only light during the boss battle? Either way, there's definitely an irony there, right? That her black flames are bringing forth exactly, what they depicted. Anyway, but I think the idea is supposed to be that the ashes were, were something to be cautious and consider dangerous. That might have been one of the reasons to have Yorshka sent off with the body. Might have even been Ariandel's excuse. He goes over, sends Yorshka off to see good old Gwendolyn with Priscilla's body. Obviously takes the body away and stuff. Velka, like I said, I think Velka's the only one that can realistically have provided the prophecy. She's the, obviously she's someone who knows arts old and new, so if anyone is able to see the future, it would be her. Unlike the other examples, like with Aldrich or with a lesser extent the Firekeeper stuff, there isn't really a naturalistic, there's not a well-grounded explanation for what they're saying. Aldrich, obviously, it's not that he actually sees the future. It's just something. He has a brain, and he can be like, hey, I see what's gonna happen here. Obviously, it's gonna be a world of stagnant dark, which means deep, and I'm the guy who's all deep and stuff. So clearly, I can be the king of that new age and stuff, right? Like this, he's the guy that can see the writing on the wall. Similar thing with the Firekeeper, except she's connected to the First Flame and stuff with the eyes and things like that. So, all you know, the first Firekeeper and stuff, and then our later Firekeeper. So, both of them have good explanations for why they can see the future with those eyeballs. And then you have Frida and Ariandel, where it's just like there's a prophecy where there's going to be 2 ashes that show up, and those 2 ashes, when those 2 ashes end up showing up, it's going to cause the fire to finally be lit. There's no longer going to be able to hide it. And I'm just like, huh. I don't know how you can get to that conclusion without having actual foresight. Actual powers of prescience. Oh, I don't know if you saw, but I said that in the texture for Stabber and Crusher, their arms are embered, a bit of face too, if I'm not wrong. I don't remember that detail, but I can believe it. That would make sense with the idea that they are ash. I wish after you beat the second phase with Ariandel, it gave the players Ember restored to revigorate, similar to Alfreda rises again. Ooh, that would be cool. I could see that, yeah. I could definitely see that. I get why they don't do it, you know, just for the mechanics of the boss fight and stuff, but that would have been a cool little thing they could have added. Also a good way to reset your health bar in the middle of the fight, so third phase, you're not, like, starting out at a Estus disadvantage, potentially. So the stakes are represented for Priscilla's world? No, I think the stakes are representative for Priscilla's children. So I think they represent Yorshka and, the Painter. The only other explanation I can think of is that they're like 2 halves of a single snake that represent Priscilla, but we don't see a head on either, at least a clearly defined head on either, let alone just one. And Priscilla should already be dead by the time these things are getting set up, right? Because it's very clear the whole point of the prophecy is a reaction then, especially if it's done by Velka, right? Because Velka sees her daughter is dead, right? Like, Velka's like, I leave all of you alone with my daughter so she can kind of, you know, live in peace, enjoy her own little, you know, private world, get some good therapy, and you all kill her, right? I think in that context, and with how Gale prays for her, because, you know, oh, we've made our resolve, please answer it, give us fire, all that stuff, right? I think it sounds pretty clear that Velka basically said, okay, you're going to have the fire is going to come, and it will come at the behest of 2 ashes, That's it. I'm out of here. I'm done with all of you. I think that's probably what was playing out there. It explains a lot about almost the sort of like self-reproachment with how Gale treats the whole matter, right? And how Velka is clearly being worshipped here, but obviously she's not actually, you know, exerting any presence here, right? Because this is all stuff where she sees where this is going to end, and she's basically like, okay, that's how it ends. And that's her way of kind of like, you know, a very classic, you know, Greek tragedy of, I am cursing you by telling you what is going to play out, whether you like it or not. It's just going to cause you extra stress and consternation, because you're going to do everything in your power to try to stop it, but having already seen the future, I know that you knowing that isn't going to change anything. Using dark weirdness to see the future. That would be presumably it. It would have to be something similar to how the Firekeepers can see the end of fire through their connection to the first flame, right? So it leads them to seeing the world where the flame actually goes out in that pure darkness. In this context, though, it would probably be Velka using some of her magic, maybe dark, maybe not, but, you know, probably dark given her special love for that. And it would probably be allowing her to be able to have some, because again, the dark is dominion over space and thus time by extension, right? So similar to how the fire is light and time, and therefore you can cause some time-space manipulations there. I could see Velka somehow having some art or some means with which would allow her to have some limited type of foresight or whatever. And again, she would be the one character you could excuse it for, because the entire point about Velka is she's this smart person who knows like every magic. And she's had plenty of time where she could develop something like that. If I had nickel every time FromSoft made enigmatic serpents with vague lore, I'd have 2 DSA pretty on. I mean, Demon Souls doesn't have snakes, does it? Damn. Yeah, you're right. Only 2. Bloodborne. I mean, let's be fair. I don't know if I'd call it enigmatic. But the snakes in Bloodborne are pretty goddamn random. It's like, ah yes, a tangle of snakes. There's a snake in Sekiro. Is that one enigmatic though? Isn't it just like a local deity or something? And they just offered like human sacrifice or something to it? I forget. I forget a lot of the hyper-specific lore for Sekiro from what I saw from Acer's vid. Then the snakes are just showing the hatred towards Priscilla's heritage because they're tied to Velka. I can't quite get their presence in the stabber and Krisha. Okay, so here's what I think, no, Bray. I think the idea is that Ariandel. Okay, so let's take the question of Priscilla's father out of the equation. Let's just look at this from Ariandel's perspective. Ariandel is clearly all gung-ho, but with Frida's idea of trying to keep the fire at bay and try to preserve this world even if it's rotten, because this is their world and he doesn't want to give up and accept change, right? Ariandel was not tricked. In that case, one has to then question, how long has he had this perspective which through Frida has allowed him to act upon it? He's collaborating with her, and she's the pretty lady, and the pretty lady gets a bunch of knights who can act on her behalf that maybe Ariandel would not be able to get away with if he acted openly, especially after the villagers have more or less decided, nah, we do want this burning thing. And the fact that even though he is a representative of Velka and presumably is supposed to be sharing word and teaching them on the nature of the prophecy, that they all seem to be pretty, they didn't commit to the burning until the actual until like very late into the game after Frida showed up. Taking that all together, it seems like this is how it played out. Priscilla died. Ariandel is more or less, maybe he's regretful or something like that, but he's more or less okay with it. He doesn't have he doesn't have a problem per se with Priscilla being dead, because hopefully with Priscilla dead, her ideology of wanting to, give up the painting will go with it. And she's grooming her daughter and stuff for that. Velka comes in, and she basically says, oh, no, we're not doing this. How dare you do this? All right, I am going to foresee that 2 ashes are going to show up, and they are going to cause fire to appear, and it's going to bring about the end of your world here. So you know what? You want to enjoy your time in this world, you can enjoy it. And maybe she's also responsible for making the painter immortal, because as we know, the painter can't be killed, right? No matter what you do, she will not die. So I forget, does this... Yeah, no, it's an actual tree. If the painter cannot die, then obviously that complicates things. And again, this is something where I can only imagine Velka doing this, because it seems rather random if it was Priscilla, but Priscilla didn't do it for herself, and then Priscilla ends up dead. Like, it's like, huh? Can't do that for you too, girly pants? So then I think that Ariandel sees all this and he's like, well, shit. As a representative of, essentially, as a pastor representative of the goddess Velka, I can't really be openly, blaspheming her, right? Or else everyone's gonna have my head. So instead, I'm going to take it, I'm gonna accept it, I'm gonna try to curb people's enthusiasm about this by creating this subtle propaganda how, fire's not going to be that great, but if it happens, it's going to cause, it's going to, the Ashen ones are actually going to bring about the death of, Yorshka and Priscilla, which is why we have to send, Priscilla the painter, Yorshka and the painter, so we have to send, Yorshka away, and we have to keep the painter well protected and all this stuff. So I think all of that... I think all of that plays into why Ariandel has the chapel depict the Stabber and Crusher, the Ashen Ones, killing those snakes. Because I think it's supposed to kind of be sort of a subtle nudge at, you know, it's not going to be that great. They're going to overthrow the old order. And what, you know, the world of Priscilla's lineage, her legacy, is going to be completely destroyed if the old painting is gone. Which means that the painter and Yorshka are going to be destroyed along with them. So I think all of that is being played into that. And I think it's all purposefully done where Ariandel will never outright say that that's bad. But he's using every subtle indicator he can to kind of like nudge all the villagers to kind of think over and agree with him. Now then the rot appears, and I think once the rot starts manifesting and you're having, you know, all the stuff we see in the village with like, you know, them, you know, everything they're eating and stuff is rotting them from the inside out and all that. I think once that starts to occur, I think that's where you start seeing, that Ariandel and Frida, by extension, lose any support from anyone but their most diehard fans, like the Frida Knights. I think that's where the villagers basically all come together and resolve, you know what, we actually do want this fire thing, this rot kind of sucks, we don't want to stay in a world that's going to rot like this. But that's when Ariandel basically allows Frida to run roughshod over the village, right? We also know, of course, the painter gets locked up, but it's not really because of Frida, it's because of Wilhelm, who seems to be acting kind of independently or whatever. It seems like, again, because the painter is kind of immortal, Frida and Ariandel don't really care, because as long as, you know, as long as they keep the fire suppressed, as we see with Ariandel and his self-flagellation, as long as they do that, then we're all good. It doesn't matter if the painter's alive. So I think that's the way the scenario played out. I see, understandable. Yeah, good. I don't know if anyone asked you this before, but is Velka dead? No. She seems to be one of the few gods. She's probably old as fuck, honestly. You know, she's probably like Gwyn, old lady style, but hey, maybe she's got some good skincare or something among her magic spells, because, you know, all her depictions still portray her with a nice, smooth young woman's... Well, actually, I can't say that, right? Her depictions use the High Priestess statue, technically would be an old lady, right? So... Bloodborne has a cut snake, and the Shadow of Yharnam uses snakes, so there's that. Yeah, but, you know, the cut snake ball is just a giant, you know, it's just the giant tangled mass of snakes, right? So it's not that, you know. That's why I say it's just, you know, the snakes in general in Bloodborne, they're kind of random. But, I don't know if I describe them as enigmatic, and that would include the boss. Though I guess if you combine them with Shadows of Yharnam, maybe? Because Shadows of Yharnam is a bit weird, but again, it's not really a mystery, I would say. I think in Sinclair lore, the snake is just a man-eater in the woods and consumed so much blood, transcended and became an eldritch snake. No, I'm pretty sure all the snakes are natural. Yeah, I'm pretty sure all the snakes are... Yeah, there doesn't... Again, like I say, they're not really enigmatic, they're just random, because it's like, why did Miyazaki think, ah yes, ball of snakes? Maybe he was watching Indiana Jones or something. But anyway, so it does seem to be the idea is just like portraying a bunch of snakes everywhere, in the forest, you know, vermin, poison, you know, all that type of jazz. But yeah, I'm glad I'm going over this because it's starting to make a lot more sense in my head as I try to talk myself through this. Yeah, so you have the chapel there, you have the village overlooking there, obviously we can see the dead tree there, you have the mausoleum down there. Now, that's another question I have. Oh, you know what? Actually, no. I think I can answer that, too. I think... Okay, yeah. I think the mausoleum under the chapel here is supposed to be for... Yeah, I think the mausoleum is for all the dead from Ariamis, not Ariandel. I think that most likely the reason why we have a church graveyard and then the mausoleum graveyard under this chapel is that Priscilla becomes the steward, because, you know, Priscilla's tower is right over there, right? So it's at the foot of where the chapel is, right? So it's right back there. So the painting gets restored by Ariandel. He paints over all of this, right? Priscilla establishes her new home up there. They build a new mausoleum, or catacomb, whichever you want to call it, underneath here. That catacomb serves the main purpose of burying all the dead who were previously buried or kept there in old Ariamis. So they take all the old dead, dredge them up, and then move the bodies and bury them there, and then Priscilla will watch over them because she is their quote-unquote mother, right? So she's gonna be there, you know, as like the motherly figure, always watching over them in death. Then you have the village being established here because it's the new home, right? So they establish their own village down here. And Ariandel, as the painting's restorer, becomes the pastor. He becomes the Holy Father. So he becomes the Godfather. Right? Now here we see this sewage outlet thing here. Now, I have no idea how you're supposed to get into this village normally, because we get in through the sewage canal. Also, God, this thing must smell. But they establish their village, Ariandel becomes the pastor, and he starts... And it's obvious why. He restored the painting. He's someone who's clearly very dedicated and devoted to this world and its inhabitants and the people that Velka has. So they naturally decide, okay, we're gonna let you be our teacher, our mentor, our holy, kind of like a saint almost, right? This is essentially kind of them giving him sainthood in a sense. And that makes him put into a position of authority as like an elder. But obviously he's still gonna always be second to Priscilla. And if Priscilla's supporting fire and burning down the old world to make room for the new one, and Ariandel doesn't, he likes his restored old world, right? He wants to preserve the old painting. Then we can see the problem. The problem is this restored world, thanks to his blood, is just as much finite. And by trying to delay the burning with his blood, actually, that does bring a question then, because Ariandel was doing the delaying already with the painting rotting. Oh, actually, you know what though? It could be that the Priscilla. It's because the painting was beginning to decay and rot, and Ariandel buying them time, that Priscilla was developing her philosophy of wanting to see that fire restored. Sorry, that fire, the painting was restored, and then the fire, would burn through that restored painting so that way they could, burn away the old and set up for the new. Yeah. ER is a redo of Dark Souls 3 plot. Legendary Lord / Demigod failed to link the fire, brandish the Elden Ring, so a backup system summons the run to the litter, unkindled / tarnished, not the failed lords. Honestly, that is incredibly true. Yeah, you're right. That kind of is the premise, isn't it? Honestly, you just need them venturing north, and it would be complete. Instead, it does the Bloodborne thing and has them venturing east. Well, I guess unless you're from the land of reeds, then you venture west. That you somehow still end up on the east side. So I don't know. Maybe you were a samurai who were like, I need to find a boat, and nobody could give you a boat in the east, so you just had to keep on traveling the continent until you got to the west. That's the plot of every Souls game. Not really. in Dark Souls 1, there isn't, you're not really a backup. You are the thing. Like you were the plan A, at least of Gwendolyn and Framp's thing, right? You were, if anything, you could, like, I guess you could argue if you reframed it as you're the last-ditch effort. That might be a good way to make it where they're all harmonized together. What's about Dark Souls 2? Dark Souls 2, I guess you could also kind of say that, again, if you go with the idea you're the last-ditch effort, but I'll be honest, Dark Souls 2's plot's such a clusterfuck. And Bloodborne is completely different. That's for sure. The stake is the indicator that Miyazaki was missing Dark Souls, truthfully. He just wanted to go back to Dark Souls. He actually didn't care for Bloodborne. He got bored with it halfway through. He's like, I miss my Dark Souls. And then he saw what happened with Dark Souls 2. He's like, oh, I miss my Dark Souls. There we go. Okay, yeah. Because that was a huge problem, was me trying to figure out how to rectify. Because one of my first impressions was the idea that Priscilla would have to die either before or in the course of Ariandel restoring the painting. But now I don't think that's the case. Now, yeah, I think you can reasonably justify that Ariandel did in fact restore the painting, but that's because it was unexpectedly falling apart. He showed the potential to keep it going. Yeah. And Priscilla, meanwhile, was developing this idea of, I don't know, I think this is just a band-aid fix. I think we need to worry about a more long-term solution. But then, as we know, she died. DS2, you're a random person? Yeah, I guess. You're just plain random. In Dark Souls 1, you can argue the same thing. You're random. You're like both of you are random people that were part of this larger plan where they just kept throwing bodies at the problem until it hopefully got solved, right? That you can analogize to be the same across all the games. There's always this plan to just throw bodies at the problem, and eventually one of them's gonna work. It's gonna be very weird for me because... Really? I can't believe they don't let you jump on that thing. No way! Seriously, who thought it was a good idea to make trees evolve skulls and lungs to breathe? I'm just saying, clearly they took the wrong lessons from the giants. Old man killed her. I definitely could see Ariandel doing it, but then this goes back to the question about the father and stuff, and I do wonder that. Maybe killed them both, or did he tempt the father into doing it? I mean, the problem is because we have so little to work off with when it comes to the children and stuff, I can see it going either way, and I don't know which one Miyazaki intended. If any, he might have not thought about it too hard. For all we know, Priscilla's husband was a completely ordinary person, and he died before either of his he died after she gave birth to the painter. Though then that does bring questions of if he was able to get her pregnant twice, why is Yorshka still looking so much significantly older than the painter? Maybe the painter's just a natural-born lolly, you know? You know, short girls do exist. Ah, but they still treat her like a child and refer to her as such. Yeah, I don't know. I can't believe all the enemies, they brought back the flies for the Shadow of the Erd Tree. Yeah, you know, that wasn't on my bingo card. I was like, they're bringing back this skeleton. And they actually made him kind of actual skeletons. Oh. Well, that's gonna hurt. And they build the village right next to. Yeah. Okay. Alright, so this is all starting to make a lot of sense in my head. Actually talking it out loud with you guys is really helping me sort through my thoughts through on this. So yeah, that's how it all squares in my head now. Okay. Alright, that's fixing some of the lingering questions I was having on this scenario. Nothing really more to add here except, you know, the worm stuff they got here. Little church well. Beautiful Rosaria gates right over there. Just gonna casually bring those in. I forgot what soul was there before it was in New Game Plus, or if that's a new corpse that wasn't there originally. There we got the altar where Velka's statue should have been. We got the other altar down there with the books and stuff. Same with that altar there. We got our friend over here. Uh-huh. I definitely cropped that one. Oh, do I do I? Yeah, I only have the one. I need to set that up proper. Okay. Good to remember. Alright, this one I can crop now. There we go. Beautiful. So all that knowledge and stuff, Ariandel would be, you know, teaching from the pulpit here, as it were. Right? They bring in other people, like Lloyd's folks and stuff. It becomes this nice, you know, nice religion where they all come together, kumbaya, and being all social rejects. It's kind of like their whole thing. Mm-hmm. There we go. Oh. Uh-huh. Looking over here. Maybe. Nah, he's moving around stuff too much. If I killed this guy, I could probably get away with that. But yeah, think it over. I think that pretty much answers my last lingering question. Then Frida shows up. And she basically stays behind, becoming another holy person, loved as kind of like a Priscilla replacement. Oh, I can get up here. Okay, it's just really... It's just... Oh. It's just really, really inconsistent. Gotcha. There we go. Phew. That's not what I wanted. I keep forgetting how these spells work. Ah, damn it. I messed it up. Well, this world was a bust. Time to reset the world line. I think what I need to do is go for the melee from up there, and then after the guy falls, I go for the range. Feel free not to answer this because I don't want to throw you up, but when do you think the Glowmite Queen and Malekith fought, timeline-wise? I actually have an entire... Let me bring it up. I actually have an entire thing for the Godfrey era part of the timeline I've done. I've talked about it on the Twitters, not using the new name, several times in the past. But let me bring this one up for you. Let's first get over here. I'm gonna do this just in case. Is it weird that I felt bad for Lloyd after this DLC? I mean, power hungry or no, he was the only one taking the reins of the Pantheon after most of them left or withdrew. Yeah, I think there's an argument to be made that Lloyd is very much a tragic figure, right? Because he's sort of like he's a product of circumstance, right? You know, it's not his fault that he's the brother of the guy who birthed Gwyn, right? Like Gwyn could have been like, we don't know if he had children or anything, but let's say that Gwyn did have cousins, like. I don't think he did, but based on just how everything plays out. But let's assume he did. Like, you know, this could be like my son could have been the one who could have found that Lord Soul and done it, right? You know, it's just that your son just happened to find it, right? Not, you know, it's very easy to kind of like reduce things to that way. So there's very much sort of a tragedy in how he handled it because, like, you know, he sort of was, you know, just by a product of his birth and circumstance, he was kind of unlucky in that respect. So he's just, you know, the king's uncle. And then when the king gives him, you know, some of that power and stuff, you know, he does this huge thing in the context of, you know, Anor Londo and stuff of trying to keep this pantheon together and being essentially Gwyn's point man in the field and stuff, right? And he accomplished this amazingly, right? And we see, you know, gold coins with his image and stuff. But, you know, then when you know, the firstborn is kicked out or whatever and stuff, like he's, you know, he's very much... trying to fill in and step into that gap as, like, the All-Father and stuff, you know, I'm the chief god now and all that stuff. I could definitely see he loves whipping out his timeline. I do, in fact, love whipping out that timeline, as I look through it right now. But, it's one of those things where I could definitely say that, there's a certain element of tragedy, I think, to Lloyd and stuff, and, you know, him being, quote-unquote, hoist by his own petard. Oh, better to close this now. Oh, gosh. Oh, my, wait, what? One sec, I gotta reopen this and... Elden Ring... Okay, come on, work. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! What if I do this? Oh my... I don't know. I don't understand how this thing... Can I... Nope. What about if we go back to Dark Souls 3? Nope. What if we go to Dark Souls 3 Ariandel? Nope. Oh my god. Just show it! Nothing can ever be simple. Come on, come on. Again, I don't know why it does this. It is such a bizarre thing for me. Let's check the constant scopes thing. Alright, so what if I do this? Elden Ring. There we go! Alright, let's go. Yeah, here we go. This is my most... Finally, it worked. This is the most recent timeline I have, right? So, to summarize this, we got Birth of the Erd Tree. Marika doing her thing at the Gate of Divinity, gets the seed, burns the Erd Tree, yada 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 yada. We have Horalu becoming Godfrey, so he fights for people, defeat the Horalu and the Oriza tribe under him, take over the Sun Capital, burn it to the ground, and establish Langdell in its place after defeating Sarash and stuff. You know, the whole agreement comes to a head. They have their sort of peace or whatever. You know, Sarash becomes the Chancellor, and Godfrey, Horalu becomes Godfrey. Then you have the Altus Plateau unification, so now it's time to go sweep over the rest of the plateau. So while Marika's building up her new capital of Langdell on the side of the Sun Capital, you've got the rest of the plateau coming under Godfrey's domain. Now, with what we know from the DLC now, I'm actually, I'm wondering if there was a lot more, it was a lot easier to take over places like Dominula, and Gelmir, if, maybe the reason why we don't see much evidence of or at least too much evidence of fighting on Gelmir is maybe because Marika has a cultural connection there, and they had an understanding. It's like, okay, you give us, you give up the banished knights and people, all the dragon worshippers, and then we'll go home. You'll just become nominally under us, but we'll let you continue doing your thing, right? Because that's where America's very tolerant. Anyway. Then you get the banishment to penal colonies. All those farm colonists and stuff that all around the plateau are being rounded up and being banished all the way over there. You got the Giant War then that comes next. You got the Age of the Erd Tree after the Giant Wars. All the giants have been wiped out essentially, save one. Trolls get to come home with Marika and become part of the Order, blah, 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 blah. And then you get the Age of the Erd Tree, wonderful peace and prosperity and crap. And then you get the Glowmite Queen incident and Marika sealing destined death within Malekith's sword. Everyone assumes the Glowmite Queen is a rival Empyrean to Marika before one of them became a god. But I think Glowmite Queen only showed up in the era of the Erd Tree. Marika is a god. Yes, I agree. That's where I land with this timeline here. I don't think that there's any... Oh, Marika had some rival to becoming god and stuff. I've heard some people at least feel like maybe some circumstantial evidence could be the quote-unquote skin sack thing we see, where she seems to take a piece of the Elden Ring out for the Gate of Divinity. But let's be honest, there's a lot of dead bodies for that Gate of Divinity. Even if we assume it is skin, who's to say it's god skin? It could literally just be human skin. I know that sounds really, really nasty, but, she's literally walking on a bunch of bodies with blood and mucilage. And I'll be honest, that's still assuming that it is, in fact, some sort of skin sack. The fact that DLC has zero Glowmite Queen lore is kind of proof of that. I wouldn't say it's necessarily proof of that, especially considering arguably you do get Glowmite Queen lore because Melina gets indirectly referenced with Mesmer and stuff, being him being the older brother to her. Which makes me wonder if they're twins. But yeah, I get what you're saying. There's no attention whatsoever given to the Glowmite Queen and stuff like that. And again, it's because I think there's enough Glowmite Queen lore, and I don't think any of the Glowmite Queen lore that we, much like the Godwyn lore, I think we already have more than enough Godwyn lore. So in fact, I think the fact that they basically just said, oh, here's what happened to, let's flesh out the connection between Godwyn and the start of the Ancient Dragon Cult. You have his personal knights, and then you also have this connection with, what's going on with Godwyn and the trees of the Shadow Tree, the roots of the Shadow Tree, and all the catacombs that have been set up. It's like, okay, yeah, it's the same as in the normal world. It crosses dimensions. Also, if I recall, the sky is purple with gold showing through the portal. I don't remember the exact color off the top of my head. Yeah, I don't remember that part. But yeah, I don't think Glowmite Queen fits in. I think everything, the problem that you come across, and this is the question that's sort of key to placing the timeline on the god hunts as I have it here, is who are the gods whom are getting skinned? The only thing you have to work off on is that they clearly have humanoid faces, and they have golden eyes like all those who are under the Erd Tree's dominion. Those are the only two details we have to work with. If they have a bunch of golden eyes, they can't be Hornsent. Because I don't think any of the Hornsent have golden eyes, if I recall. And they certainly don't have horns on that skin, right? So that certainly opens up questions. The only real answer is that the gods are being referred to are demigods. To be specific, right? Because they're all part of that divine bloodline, right? And the word demigod, again, the term god, of course, uses the term for kami. Obviously, the term for demigod uses the English term of demigod and stuff like that. So you can argue that there's some wiggle room with how Miyazaki is using, you know, cross-language terminology there. Though, again, I would say that the way that God is handled in Elden Ring, they very much use the very old pagan, not the modern Judeo-Christian concepts of how we, you know, it shapes even pagan cultures today of God, but the ancient pagan idea of like sort of just God is just a, you know, it's a spirit, it's a spiritual entity, right? A being which is part of the spirit realm, and that whatever that is, we use the term God for that. If I recall, old version of the Iron description specified that it was demigods, and yes, it was in the 1.0 version. So you can't pretend that at the very least, at some point in development, the developers even 100% intended for the godskin the godskins to all be about harvesting demigods. That went down the wrong pipe. So everything in the game supports this idea that the godskins are you know, after America establishes her empire and has kids. And then the question would be okay, if it's all happening afterward, who is the Goldmine Queen? And the game, like I said, I was saying, okay, the evidence is pretty overwhelming, but, you know, I'm still open to the idea that it could be someone else, like maybe we're misreading it, or there's something we're missing or whatever, about Melina being the Goldmine Queen. Then I think it was Nobre or whoever told me about the Frenzy cutscene, and I saw that thing, and I was like, okay, no, yeah, it's 100%. like, everything about that frame is like, yeah, that's Miyazaki being like, here's the reveal, right? It's literally him doing everything but actually just outright saying, because again, if you know Miyazaki, you know this man does not like saying things outright in that way. Something like that he wants to show you, he doesn't want to tell you. Because just being like, yeah, Melina's the Goldmine Queen, like, oh, I'm going to Goldmine Queen all over you, like, yeah, that's not going to be Miyazaki. But like, once I saw that, I was like, okay, yeah, he's on this. Oh, damn. No, my friend! Alright, killed me. There you go. Yeah, I can't see the figures just being okay with a bunch of gods the level of America. I think God has taken more, like, very powerful being. Yeah, I think that's the best way to think about it, because we have outer gods, we have the greater will, who's also, like, again, we also have to keep in mind that the arcane is handled very widely in that case. So we see stuff with the two fingers, the greater will, America, the outer gods, all of that is under the, all of that has been at one point or another placed under the category of the arcane, which is, again, the secrets of God, divine mysteries, knowledge which God only knows, you know? It's Globin time! Yeah. Like, that's just not Miyazaki's style. It's one of the problems with him not releasing, it's one of the reasons, you know, actually, I still want that. I still want to see my HUD. It's one of the problems with Miyazaki, not releasing Martin's, writings. Because they're really good, and as the fanboy in him wants to share it with everybody, but, again, the auteur in him knows that goes against his aesthetics, right? His principles as, you know, a FromSoft subtle storyteller. So he doesn't want to release it all and just hand everybody the answers to all of probably the major, at least the major basic lore questions. My headcanon is that America has a lot of unwanted children. She's a strumpet, so she gave Melina destined death, had her hunt them down using her children as nothing new, just like she used Mesmer. No, I don't think, I've said this before. My reading on America has been that America loves family, but she loves power more. So for much of her life, she is always, whenever she's been put in a position where she has to choose between family and power, she always picks power. Because she likes being God. But every time she does it, it breaks her a little inside and eats away at her. And eventually, by the time we get to the end of Marika's reign, she seems to more or less mellow out and be kind of okay with working within the system. Again, maybe there's more to it, so I'm not going to say for absolute certain there. There may be some deeper schemes going on there. But it seems to be the idea that Marika's more or less come around, you know what, I'm not going to kill my children just because they might threaten my power. I'm going to try to work with that, right? I'm maybe trying to prepare for having someone else replace me in the future. I think all of that was, in fact, going on. I think what happened for Marika was that, Ronnie came in and ended up killing a bunch of her kids. And that became the final straw where Marika kind of felt like, listen, oh, damn. I did everything you wanted. Damn. Oh, kill me. Hey, Doomfist, welcome. Anyway, I did everything you wanted. I did it all. I was playing ball, and I still got screwed over and lost my kids. I think that's where she finally snapped and says, you know what, fuck you all. I'm gonna destroy everything. But yeah, I do not see the ideas that Marika wanted the Glowmite Queen to do what she did. I think it's very much a case of Marika was in power. Her thing was all about life and stuff. Mesmer and Melina were born. Melina, for one reason or another, basically seems to have been not happy with Marika's order for whatever reason, and wanted to enact order of death. To that end, she created the Godskins. She, in league with the Serpent, again, that's another point in my timeline here, trying to highlight, you know, Serpent Rebellion seems to also coincide with this. In collaboration with the Serpent, she creates the Godskins and starts hunting down the demigods. And this results in Marika retaliating. Godfrey kills the Serpent, using the Snake Hunter, most likely. Melina. I also have a suspicion that Melina's choice for Elden Lord got eaten by the Serpent and became a right card type situation. That's also my suspicion. But again, I haven't done the deep dive on right card and stuff, or the Glowmite Queen and things like that, so I'm not going to say that as an absolute fact. But and then Marika has Malekith handle Melina herself to take care of her, and I think that's how things played out. Oh. Ah, damn. I should have. If this is not New Game Plus, I think 2 or whatever, I think I could do this. I think killing the guy, though, with my current build, though, is going to be super hard. I'd like to argue against Radahn's godhood. He may not technically be an Empyrean, but he did literally stop the stars from moving and controls a fundamental cosmic force. Wait, I like to. It's like trying to argue against Radahn's godhood. Oh, okay, sorry. I was like, wait, you're trying to argue he's not a god? Yeah. To say that Radahn is not a demigod, or at the very least has powers on the level of someone who is a child of a god, would certainly be silly when you consider some of his feats. But I don't know if that would be necessarily because he's a child of a god that he can do that, or if it's just because, you know, independent of that, he's just a talented person. It ignored death was what her motivation was, I guess. That could be it. That's fair. My backup headcanon is that other gods do in fact exist. The DLC reveals Marika becoming god is nothing special. It's just enough through sacrifices. So to declare herself the one true god, Melina would be declared an Empyrean, and she becomes the Glowmite Queen to rebel against her mother. Again, I can see that. I think the thing with the god is that the god is ultimately a vessel for the Elden Ring, and so you need to have the Elden Ring. So whether or not you talk about, oh, it's nothing special, it's like, yeah, sure. But there's still the fact that Marika was born Empyrean, it was essentially destined for godhood in the beginning, and had a wolf boy, Malekith, with her and all that stuff. So I do think that's sort of discounting the fact that there's definitely something, there's essentially some sort of cosmic selection going on there, right? So I don't think it would be smart to kind of just dismiss that out of hand. In my opinion, the best argument against the case that the Glowmite Queen, as Melina, committed these acts at the essentially kicking off the end of the Age of Plenty, in the middle of Marika's reign, would be the fact that Godwyn is supposed to be the first of the demigods to have died. However, I would rationalize that as when you look at it in context, because every FromSoft game, everyone has to acknowledge, there's always an asterisk to put next between. If you have in FromSoft a game that says, I am the first of whatever, there's always an asterisk there, because there's always a lot of qualifications in there when you look within the wider context of whatever the lore is. Damn, that thing got destroyed too. But... Fudge biscuits. Yeah. I have the right idea, though. I definitely have the right idea. Two Fingers got one right. Good for them. But the, I think what ends up happening with Godwyn in there is that you have to keep in mind that Rogier, when we first talks about him, talks about how Godwyn is the first demigod to die in history. And I think that's a very key point, is the idea seems to be that everything same thing we see with Godfrey, where it's like, oh, he's the first Elden Lord in history. But in the prehistory, before the Erd Tree, there was Placidusax, right? So I think there's very much this thing where we have to put into context that when we have stuff like first dead demigod, we're probably being like, yeah, that's true, because basically everything from Glowmite Queen to the Realm of Shadow, all the stuff from Godfrey's reign is sort of downplayed or you know, sort of tried to be, oh, we forget about that stuff. That never happened. Because everything's been replaced by this, you know, the ideology of Radigan and Golden Order fundamentalism. Yep. We're still destroying stuff and causing damage. You are such a pain in the ass. Alright, kill me already, buddy. And this is why we use cheat engine. Gold or propaganda. Yeah, that would essentially be what I would argue there. Is that it's not that it's inaccurate, it's just that you need to put the asterisks and be like, in history. And the history, in the context of Marika's Kingdom. So very much how Godfrey is the first Elden Lord in the history of Marika's Kingdom. Godfrey is the first Elden Lord. To be fair, we also do get hits of other lands and countries, so we have very little idea of deities and rulers they have. We have that idea of different lands and countries, but a lot of times the history is segregated. So if you're arguing for in the lands between, I would say I think there's only ever been one god at a time. If you're arguing in the context of outside the lands between, I'm also skeptical because it doesn't look like, it looks like there have been some human migrations from the lands between who establish all the various nations, but we don't really have anything akin to gods in Elden Lord.